Coming in number 5, we've got Satan. You know, most kids at some point have probably had some questions about the devil, Lucifer, the Antichrist, the works. Depending on who they ask about this, they could get a whole lot of different answers. I'd say the best way to approach a child's curiosity about Satan is to let them know that he's a famous figure that embodies evil and then leave it at that. I'm not one to instill religious attitudes in children, and I don't want any parents chewing me out for pushing them towards or away from Satanism. Who knows what folks want these days? But if you go in the other direction and give the child a comprehensive biblical study of Satan, you might be putting some unnecessarily scary images in their minds. Kids don't get the intricacies of religion and how gray areas work. They just want to know that they're safe and loved. So by painting a vivid picture of a fallen angel, you might just give a child a complex. Like this kid right here, who drew a horrifying charcoal-style rendering of Satan when they were just 8 years old. Look at the details they included, from the spindly limbs to the horrible horns to a literal pitchfork. An 8-year-old probably doesn't have such a detailed image of a demon in their mind unless somebody really wanted to put the fear of God in them. And these drawings, they're not the worst part. See the text? It's in Finnish, but it reads, "They live inside of you. You surrender to them with pleasure. They are Satan, but that is wrong." Like, what? Whose kid is writing this? Did they learn it from a demon themselves? I'd be watching my back each and every day if this was something I discovered in my kid's notebook. Holy smokes. At that point, there isn't much left to do but pick a side. Are you going to be a holy roller and start praying for their future, or side with Satan and begin the process of converting to Satanism? Because at that point, there's no way you're staying neutral. Coming in at number 4, the Slender Squad. What's worse than Slenderman? I'll give you a second to ponder that. The answer is 3. 3 Slendermen, all in different shapes and sizes, likely with assorted terrible abilities and methods of killing you. Now picture all of that, but only your kid can see them. That's game over, man. That's exactly the life some poor parent out there is living right now, and you know what? I hope they're doing okay. I'm not so sure they've posted since sharing this image of 3 dark-suited specters her kid scribbled. In the middle is what appears to be a pretty normal Slenderman of internet fame, although he does have more of a face than I remember. Plus, he's got an enormous jagged tooth in his gaping maw, probably used to crack open skulls or drain all the blood from an unsuspecting victim. On the right is another variant of the world's most famous creepypasta, this time with the signature no face look going down. However, it's shorter than your average Slenderman and with a couple extra sets of arms. Or they could be tentacles, which have been associated with different versions of Slenderman over the years. You know the ones with those enormous muscular hydrostats flowing out behind its body. That's not necessarily something you want your child encountering too often. Finally, if you check on the left side of the page, you're treated to an image I very well may never scrub from my brain. Long-necked Slenderman with hideous tooth-filled mouth. Not my favorite thing to think about at night, you know? This one gives me horrible Lovecraftian vibes, with the potential ability to extend that neck even further, curving around corners, into holes in the ground, or even through open bedroom windows. Oof. Now that I've described the hideous abominations, I will also remind you that Slenderman tends to lurk in the darkness, slowly driving those he chooses insane. Their tech is messed with, their memories are unreliable, their emotions become unstable. Then, he gets ya. And now there's 3 of them. Best of luck to all involved. Goodness gracious. Coming in at number 3, we've got a killer chicken. Unless you've been a lifelong vegan, you're probably in trouble with this one. We've seen plenty of goofy renditions of winged food in the past, from Poultrygeist to Thanksgiving to Blood Freak. But when a kid starts seeing stuff like that without being exposed to schlocky R-rated B movies, you have to wonder where that idea came from. Either they could probably use a little bit of therapy, or they actually ran into something that takes the form of a chicken and wields an axe. I'll take option 1, Alex. There are a lot of questions that get brought up when looking at this surreal piece of children's art. Who let the chicken get a hold of an axe? How did it learn to wield it so effectively? Would local law enforcement get involved? Will the chicken kill again? When will the chicken kill again? These are all great questions to ask the child who drew the picture, followed by, are you okay? Did the chicken hurt you? The sheer strength of this bird is impressive, able to cleave a pilgrim in half with a single stroke. Or maybe we missed all of the hacking and slashing required to turn one human body into two pieces. A terrifying image either way. Now, are we thinking this chicken eats people as revenge, or does it just leave all the evidence behind for more folks to stumble upon? Coming in at number 2, one bloody friend. Imaginary friends often present themselves as lovely, fun-time companions for kids everywhere. Unfortunately, due to their usually invisible nature, it's hard to really gauge if your kid has an innocent playtime pal or a bloodthirsty demon masquerading as a figment of their imagination. Oh. A classic horror trope is to get a child to draw a picture of what they see or have seen, usually resulting in some fiendish figure floating in the background. At that point, the parents call in an exorcist or chuckle and write it off as imagination's gone wild. For whatever reason, there isn't much of a middle ground between ignoring it and going full nuclear, but hey. In this case, we can very plainly see one of the most upsetting combinations of features a child could draw. The figure is tall enough to tower over the child in question, or maybe it's floating. I don't see any legs beneath that ragged skirt. The ghostly apparition seems to be transparent, as in you can see right through it. Plus it has ghastly red eyes and smears of red all over, including on its mouth and where its hand should be. Is this thing missing a hand? Does that bloody mouth imply that it gnawed it off? This is seriously a drawing straight out of a horror movie. I wouldn't be surprised if within the next decade a major motion picture is released featuring this exact specter. The kid either witnessed something terrible, ventured into a haunted place without knowing, or has psychic powers beyond their years. Regardless of the backstory, it's time to do something about this demonic pal. And finally at number 1, you can't see it. Now here's a classic scary story stinger. The trope of a kid seeing something that nobody else can. You know, like, hey dad, who's that sleeping on mom's side of the bed? And mom's out on a business trip. Or, hey mom, Mr. Jingles told me to come play downstairs in the cellar today. It was lots of fun. And it's like, you were home alone. What do you mean Mr. Jingles called you down there? But most of the time, folks never see the horrid creatures that stalk the night and show themselves to small humans. But in this picture, it's all drawn out for us. And this time, the monster follows mom around without her knowledge. Apparently a 4-year-old drew this creepy picture of a monster and told her mom that it's always following her around. Maybe it's like a possessed shadow or a doppelganger halfway between our world and the next. The longer you look at this thing, the worse it gets though. Like, why is it 5 times bigger than the mom? Does its open mouth mean that it's looking for a snack? All in all, just a totally terrifying drawing, and something that this kid's mom wishes was kept a secret. Coming in number 5, the Taking Boy. Already we have a terrifying label for what can only be a demon obsessed with stealing people away from their families. I, for one, will always be wary of any drawing a child creates featuring a shadowy figure that nobody else recognizes. It just screams demon, or traveler from a parallel universe, or just dark energy in general. Don't mess with it. In this particular picture, we're greeted with a cute little family portrait done up in what appears to be pencil crayon. We got mommy in pink, wearing a dress, there's daddy in green, glasses and all, and of course, Julian is in the middle, half as tall and purple for some reason. I don't know too much about color theory or how to mix paints, but I don't think pink plus green equals purple. Maybe it does, and I'm outing myself as a buffoon when it comes to color, but hey. Regardless of any pigment blending here, this family photo is not what we should be focusing on. To their immediate right is a shadowy figure full of malice, the Taking Boy. No thank you. It stands out for a few reasons. Number 1 is the label. That's not a regular family name for anything. Not good. It implies that this boy likes to take. And whether that means he takes Julian's toys or his everlasting soul, we may never know. Then you've got to look at the shape of the Taking Boy. He's not a stick figure like everyone else. He's built like a gingerbread man. He's got depth. Is that muscle? Ectoplasm? Does he shapeshift between many forms, growing and changing to more effectively take what he wants? Goodness gracious, not a huge fan of that. And of course, there's his color. Everyone else is done up in bright, fun colors. The Taking Boy, shadows, the abyss, doom. I don't trust this guy as far as I can throw him, and judging by his stout build, it's not too far. Coming in at number 4, we've got Poor Dad. This seems to be a recurring theme in children's drawings, eh? Their poor dad in positions less than enviable. Last time we saw a kid chopping off their father's head while smiling.
That was grim. This time, we see a group effort and possibly even a kidnapping/hostage scenario. Has Stockholm Syndrome set in yet? I doubt we get a straight answer even if we asked. Lots of creepy details to peruse here, that's for sure. First and foremost, let's really take in the piece as a whole. This one is digital art, which is a new direction for whatever child artist put this together. I'm used to seeing stuff done up in crayon, scratchy pencil, maybe the occasional ballpoint pen and cheap acrylic. But here we've had a parent sit their kid down in front of a device to sketch it out. The kid is asking their mom why can't they see dad's face, which is a valid question when your father is over here with a bag over his head and a rope around his neck. Something seems to be off about his hands too, I just can't put my finger on it. The longer you look, the more odd details stand out, like is the dad a scarecrow? Why does mom only have one eye? What's the kid reading about? The sun and the moon? Seems a little witchy to me. Why is that cat levitating far above everyone's heads? I'm gonna go ahead and say that mama over here did away with dad and decided to perform some rituals to possibly bring a demon back in his place. Whether or not these worked out in the end is totally ambiguous, so this could be mid-ritual where the scarecrow on a noose is just a placeholder, or it could be far after the failure, in which case there's just a corpse in their house awaiting a demon that's probably not coming. What a vivid image. Coming in at number 3, we've got The Other Me. Some big Coraline vibes on this one. We're back to traditional media here. It looks like pencil on paper. The sheet is a little ripped at the bottom though. Hopefully we're not missing any extra spooky details that will irreversibly alter the plot once discovered crumpled up in a wastebasket. In the meantime, let's look closely at these two lovely individuals, each with messy hair and what can only be described as dark and crazy eyes. I'm thinking there's some button business happening here. You know the ones. We're all familiar with the other mother, right? Which makes this image a whole lot scarier than it is at first glance, which is pretty wild because it is scary at first glance. We've got two figures here, one more humanoid than the other. On the right, you can see an entity with 11 arms, 4 legs, and a gaping, possibly beaked maw. Our left standing figure is floating in midair though, which is also cause for concern. I think there are a couple ways to analyze this. One is that the figure on the left is a self-portrait by this kid, one where they see themselves as having the same eerie eyes as their companion. This could mean that their friend here is from whatever Coraline door universe may exist and is trying to lure her in and alter her. It could also be a drawing of two different creatures that approach the child. No self-portrait at all. I'm not sure which is preferable, so for now I'm gonna go with neither. Coming in number 2, we've got the big green guy. Well, hopefully Rapunzel's doing okay in there. There are 3 checks that ensure that she is, but I'm not so sure I trust that. Here's an interesting take on a classic fairy tale. Instead of being trapped in a tower or falling upon a big brambly bush, Rapunzel has been eaten by a big green guy. However, she's doing just fine. See? You can see all of her blonde hair in that stomach, and the artist assures us that she's okay. But this green guy scares the daylights out of me. I could see this monster fitting in with all sorts of horrid beasts from across fantasy media. Eating someone is one thing, but swallowing them whole and keeping them alive in your cavernous guts? That's a raunchy way to keep a prisoner, wouldn't you say? I can't imagine it'd be too comfortable either. Is she waiting to be slowly digested? Or is it a permanent prison of sorts meant to transport her from A to B in one piece? Or maybe this guy is just cruel and eats people just to leave them there forever. I mean, she'd run out of food and water eventually, right? Maybe I'm looking too far into the logistics of this, but this is definitely a demon I would avoid at all costs. I wonder what the kid's drawing now. And at number 1, we've got Tonso. Red paint in the hands of a child always has a way of looking like blood, right? Their brush strokes aren't too delicate, and any painting outside the line ends up being pretty unsettling. And this guy, Tonso? Yeah, he's a red paint nightmare and a half. All done up in red with some speckles of blue throughout. I'm not entirely sure how to describe the way this thing looks. It's a towering figure with an eerie grin and seems to be carrying a sword? Maybe it's a club or a bag full of something. Tonso is quasi-human at best and gives off some excellent Uncanny Valley vibes. Now, the form of this figure is one thing, but the backstory makes it even scarier. According to the young artist, Tonso is an ancestor and comes through the mirror to visit us. If I were a parent and heard that, I'd be checking behind each and every mirror in my house. And if there were no crawl spaces, I'd be painting the mirrors black from then on. That is some Candyman bullshit right there, and I'm taking 0 chances. The ancestor bit is extra creepy too. Like, where'd the kid get that idea? Do I want to know? Keep a close eye on any children creating art near you. If you're not careful, they could end up accidentally summoning something, or maybe you'll miss a key warning that a demon is coming to eat your family. Sheesh. Coming in at number 5, we've got Best Friends. Kids tend to make up imaginary friends for a multitude of reasons. Maybe they're lonely and want someone else to play with. It could be that something bad happened to them and they don't know how else to cope with the trauma. Hell, maybe a sibling that didn't make it reappears as a conjured pal. But usually these imaginary friends are more human in appearance. Not necessarily normal, as plenty of them can have wild, exaggerated features, but at least human-ish. Well, now look at this drawing. That's a gray. Like, an alien from outer space, man. Definitely not the kind of presence you want in your child's life. This one in particular kind of reminds me of Dark Skies, the alien-filled horror movie from 2013. If you've seen it, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. These particular aliens have a habit of abducting kids, never to be seen again. And they always foreshadow this kidnapping by appearing to their target first. Then, over time, they escalate their presence and really make themselves known to the friends and family. Usually you can figure out who's been seeing these creatures by taking a look at what they've drawn over the past little while. If you see some sort of upsetting gray presence, well, that kid is probably a goner. Just look at how convincingly alien this drawing is. From the gray skin to the pointed yet round head to the enormous black eyes similar to ones you'd see on a Halloween mask, this is a freaky thing for a kid to be drawing. Plus, they think they're best friends with the thing. That means either one of two things. The aliens are getting tricky and convincing kids to be their friends, or the kid has been seeing a person who wears an alien mask and wants to be friends with them. Either way, that's bad. Unfortunately, I am still proud of this little artist. This one's going on the fridge for sure. Coming in at number 4, we've got a demon-free day. At the end of a fun day out with your family, what do you think should stand out the most? Maybe the food you ate or the activities you participated in together. For a lot of kids, spending some quality time with their folks can be a great memory all on its own. And in this drawing, we see all of that happening. Whoever drew it had lots of fun with mom and dad, and the cat was there too. Best of all, the demon left them alone. Wait. The demon left them alone? There's a demon that's usually hanging around? Oh, now that's scary. There are a lot of implications to a drawing like this. First and foremost, there's a demon in this child's life that does not leave them alone. See, if they had just mentioned that the demon was present, we could maybe assume that the demon is a relatively new addition to their life, or maybe shows up only sometimes. But no, the fact that it was noteworthy that this demon took a day off means that it's always around, like a bad smell or a neighbor that doesn't know how to mind their business. We've got to wonder what the demon does on a regular basis then. It can be seen far away from the family in this drawing and definitely stands out as extra creepy. It's the only thing colored with black crayon and seems to be missing legs altogether. So this dark demon floats around in the air, probably regularly scaring the crap out of little Billy and family. Plus, it's wearing what looks to be a top hat, which can only mean one thing. It's like the Babadook. Maybe it's not a Babadook proper, but if it's haunting a child wearing a top hat and won't leave a family alone, it's probably damn close. If we dig a little bit deeper into that and examine the origins of a Babadook-like entity, we can assume that someone in the family is either majorly depressed or grieving an immense loss. There's so much to unpack in this seemingly simple childlike drawing. But that's the thing, even if kids can't communicate with you directly about what's going on in their life, those things are gonna show up in other ways. Coming in at number 3, we've got Daddy Dearest. Excuse me, I think there was a typo in the title of this entry. It should be Daddy Deadest. Yeah, not my best work, but you get what I'm trying to say. Being a parent is hard, or so I'm told, and you have to be the bad guy sometimes. If your kid is acting up, you can't always be nice and let it go. However, punishing your kids will inevitably make them upset, and they might lash out in different ways. Temper tantrums, locking themselves in rooms, or in this case, written threats of extreme violence. Lock the cutlery drawer and hide the knife block. Holy smokes. In this lovely piece of line art, we see a depiction of a young girl decapitating her father, accompanied by a caption reading, "This is going to happen to you." Look at the details, from the father weeping as his throat is cut, to the serrated edges on the blade, to the joyous smile on the face of the daughter. This is a well thought out crime, not one of passion. Hell, it's a promise. That's cold, cruel calculation on full display. You gotta wonder what Pops did to make this little girl so upset. Thankfully, this one's on dry erase board, so maybe if someone erases it, she'll forget all about her dastardly plan. Either that, or the erasability was all part of the plan from the start. No evidence, right? Coming in at number 2, She Followed Me Home. I've always had a lot of respect for social workers. The good ones do their best to improve the lives of folks who have found themselves in really tough situations. These situations often come with scary scenarios and really sad stories. It's hard, emotionally draining work, but if they can change the life of one person, it's totally worth it. So when I see stuff like this, I feel for them even more. A social worker was apparently speaking with a boy when he asked if he could show her a drawing he did. Naturally, she said yes, but after seeing what it was, she probably wished she didn't. He produced this drawing of a horrifying, scratchy, ghastly woman and claimed that she had followed him home recently. My goodness. This prompts a whole bunch of questions, like did he really see a person who looked like this? Because if so, holy crap. Or is it the more realistic and probably equally scary option? A woman did really follow him home and was scary enough to make him draw her like this. Kids tend to see the world through less than realistic goggles by our standards, so any woman who was following this boy might have looked like his grotesque drawing to him. So how do you even approach finding out which one is true? And finally at number 1, at night. Nighttime elevates pretty much every experience. Just ask SpongeBob. However, even though things can seem more exciting and mysterious at night, that can also mean that everything gets a little spookier. Or a lot spookier. Trees become sinister. Far off noises may seem closer and more threatening, and any sort of shadowy figure is immediately 100% more terrifying. So this drawing, aptly titled At Night, could very well depict a harmless individual strolling through the neighborhood after dark. Kids' imaginations tend to go wild after all. But what if it's not? What if this demonic, dark shroud-wearing creature with a tail is actually hanging outside your house at night? What then? Do you ask your kid where they saw this thing and risk making it real? Do you keep an eye out yourself? Or do you pretend it's just your kid's overactive imagination and let it be? None of these seem like phenomenal choices, now do they?